On this episode of Forge and Anvil, we're going to talk all about how the IRS and the ATF just raided a gun store in Montana. I'm sure this is exactly what the founders wanted. Next, we'll also discuss how Matt Walsh has once again exposed Fox News for pushing pride on their employees. On the flip side, we'll talk about how young students are making their woke teachers mad by rejecting Pride Month altogether. And finally, we'll discuss WEF member Yuval Noah Harari calling for AI to rewrite the Bible to create, quote, religions that are actually correct, end quote. All this and more, so stick around. We are joined once more by audience favorite Anastasia Hibbs. Anastasia, say hello.
I liked that. That's the first time you call me audience favorite. I like that intro. All right, it's audience favorite here, Anna Hibbs. 22 years old in West Des Moines, Iowa, and I work for the Steve Day Show, and also he is my dad as well.
Excellent. Well, welcome back, and also joining us again, number one fan of the ATF, Zach Haval.
That's me, Zach Haval, singer-songwriter, guitar player, and a piping hot ha-has and lickery-doo-dah every Tuesday night on YouTube for Musical Hangout. The only live music experience that's good for your soul, as well as your corns, ladies and gentlemen.
Excellent. And as always, I am joined by regular co-host Michael Aper.
Hello, friends. I'm back with new toys and technology, so hopefully I sound a little bit better. I'm a student of Scripture, and I'm desperate to see the righteousness of God restored to the people of God.
Wonderful. Michael, you might want to turn yourself up just a little bit. You are a little quiet on my end. All right. Well, happy Juneteenth, everybody. I did not have the day off because my work only celebrates real holidays. But that being said, we're going to jump straight into our first story here. So this is from the Post-Millennial. Montana gun owner raided by the IRS and the ATF in a pattern of intimidation and harassment. If it will load for me here. The Highwood Creek Outfitters gun shop in Great Falls, Montana, reopened for business after being raided by the IRS and the ATF on Wednesday. In a letter to IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel and ATF Director Stephen M. Diedelbach, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I'm kind of doing that on purpose, out of respect for the ATF, of course. Representative Matthew Rosendale claimed this event is another example of President Biden weaponizing federal agencies to target and harass hardworking Americans for exercising their constitutional rights. While we wait to hear more details and the rationale behind this raid, given the position of the Biden administration, this raid appears to be an attempt to intimidate firearms dealers and owners, the letter read. A pattern of intimidation and harassment seems to be emerging under Director Diedelbach's leadership of the ATF. This pattern appears to be orchestrated directly from the White House, as evident by the fact sheet released by the Biden administration, where they detail their plans to hassle mom-and-pop gun shop owners over minor record-keeping and paperwork discrepancies, the letter said. The congressman noted that the IRS confiscated all of 4,473 background check forms, even though they include no financial information, and there is no discernible reason why the IRS would need these forms. The IRS committed an egregious breach of privacy for Montana gun owners, Rosendale Jr. continued. Although there are still some murky details regarding the event at Highwood Creek Outfitters. There is no circumstance in which 4,473s, 4473s would be necessary in an investigation spearheaded by the IRS. I just realized what I did there. Sorry, folks. All the gun enthusiasts are going to kill me for that one. But the owner of Highwood Creek Outfitters, Tom Van Hoos, said in an interview with Montana News that he has been the subject of government surveillance for a couple of years, and he doesn't know the reason why, but fears it's political. I can only assume that it's because of the style of weapons that we have and the press that's so against them, he said. The current administration seems to be hell-bent on getting those guns out of the hands of average Americans. Van Hoosen said that his shop had a good relationship with the ATF. We have a reputation of dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's because there's so much legal fun to be had, he noted. It's just not worth doing things that are going to get you in trouble. According to KRTV, the Great Falls Police Department was made aware of the investigation and helped with security, but the Montana Department of Justice had no involvement. In August, the Inflation Reduction Act authorized the IRS to bring on 87,000 new agents. A job posting at the time required new agents to be qualified to use deadly force if necessary. Around the same time, the agency rehired Nicole Flax to head an office with the new agents. Flax worked under former IRS head Lois Lerner during the years of the alleged IRS targeting scandal. The addition of the new agents drew scrutiny from Republicans who claimed that they would be used to target middle-class Americans, which, of course, as you can see by this article, clearly they are wrong. They are only meant for going after billionaires and billionaires. So
that's why they needed 87,000, right?
Exactly. And I can only imagine what they needed that list of firearm sales for, but I don't know. Maybe I just have a bad imagination, but maybe you guys can enlighten me. Anastasia, any thoughts on this?
I think it's getting scarier out there. I mean, when I was reading the story earlier, it kind of reminded me of when all of the Pride stuff was going on just recently, and Biden was talking about children, and he was using terms like our kids, our future, our children, and kind of including them in his lingo. And I almost kind of think the two correlate with them. I think that there's something bigger at play. I think we're in desperate need of a spiritual revival, and without one, Satan is running amok and absolutely causing havoc on everything. But I also think that this next presidential election is going to be more important than ever. But yeah, no, I definitely think that was kind of my first correlation when I was reading this. That was the first thing that kind of popped into my head.
Zach, as the ATF's #1 cheerleader, could you please enlighten us on your thoughts?
Lol. Yeah, I mean, a parallel I drew here. I don't know if you remember this, Connor, back when you were living here, but the general store here actually lost its license to sell firearms due to this type of bad bookkeeping. I mean, I think there wasn't a whole lot of information in that article as specifically what that gun store did wrong, which is kind of concerning for different reasons, but the general store here actually messed up big time. It wasn't just they forgot to report a few sales, it was an ongoing thing. And even then, the IRS and the ATF didn't I'm sure they were aware, but they didn't have presence here. All that happened was the attorney general for the state basically took away their license for selling firearms. There was no raid. There wasn't any documents given away or anything like that. So it's not like a tiny snafu. If you're not reporting the sale of firearms, it's kind of a big deal. So but even then, when this local retailer had that problem, it was talked about in the news, the attorney general, they still can't get a license as far as they don't have a license to sell firearms anymore. But nobody got raided and nobody's personal information got taken. So it sounds like something similar might have happened here. Maybe not as bad, but the punishment that they got seemed far worse. Because not only are they losing face as a business, but also they're losing credibility as a retailer as part of it as well.
Yeah. And unfortunately, reputational damage is not exactly something that you can recoup from the federal government very easily. But Michael, what was your take?
I want to clarify with Zach real quick. Are you saying that the article that we're referencing is miscalculating what actually took place?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. They even in the article itself, it mentioned So I don't know if what they meant by like the details of the event itself are muddy, like as far as like the ATF just showed up and started cleaning house, or like the events that led to that are muddy. So like it could be like somebody reported something to the ATF and IRS, and this is just no matter how you slice it, it doesn't look good for the ATF to just show up, you know, and so anytime the ATF shows up, you should automatically be suspicious. I think the history of that organization like has earned its skepticism, you know. But so I don't know. I'm just saying is even if it was similar to the local retailer here, we didn't get the ATF didn't show up in the city. So if it's the same mistake, I'm wondering why there's such a show of force.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, here's my admittance of ignorance, is that I learned today what the ATF is. I had no idea that we had a bureau for alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives.
Yes, which, as everyone says, should be a convenience store. It should not be a bureaucracy. But please continue.
Yeah, well, that about says it all. I thought that was a somewhat random assortment of substances and weapons, or tools, rather. The way that the article that we've read presents the information makes it out to be pretty much on the nose for what we would have expected when the Inflation Reduction Act came out. And all of those agents were brought on to the IRS with the understanding that they needed to be able to operate firearms for deadly force and things like that.
Right.
That kind of, I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised if this is true. I hope it's not quite that obvious, but that's what we've been given to think about, at least.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's already been training videos that have been released with the IRS that really pokes a hole in their narrative that this is to make sure that the rich are paying their fair share. Because I don't know if you guys have seen any of those training videos, but those training videos actually show them performing an arrest on someone that has just a lawn care business. And it says in the arrest, it shows the IRS agents arresting this lawn care owner at gunpoint, and it said because he was late on his payments. So I don't know if that was just they released that video as honestly a form of intimidation to try to get people to recognize, hey, we're hiring 87,000 more of these individuals who are going to be armed. But either way, it's very clear that the narrative that the IRS agents are just meant to go after the millionaires and the billionaires, as Bernie Sanders would say it, is obviously so false when you see them arresting this guy for his lawn care business. But also, I do have to apologize. The 4473 forms, that is an application used for purchasing firearms, and man, for some reason my dyslexia is just real bad, and that post millennial article just really threw me up. But there was some typos in there, so post millennial, get your stuff together. But I don't know, Anastasia, am I crazy here? But is the IRS are they going after the billionaires?
Well, from this article and from what you're saying, it does not look like it. No, you are not crazy. No.
It almost makes you kind of hope in like a horrifying, sadistic way that like this gun store was like arming like white supremacists or something like that. Just because it would make a little
whether
bit,
it's true or not.
Yeah, I mean, because it would make a little bit more sense. This feels like the kind of thing like a government agent shows up, flashes a badge, you have a like 2-hour conversation with them at an airport Wendy's, and like you pay your taxes or something. You know what I mean? It just, that's like where I'm struggling the most with it, is because like I don't know what like, and then even still, like, did that justify like that breach of privacy of like taking all those forms and things like that? Like, I don't think so. Like, right. I want to know exactly what snafu this gun store made, because like I said, like this isn't like the first time I've seen a situation like this. Is the first time I have seen it where like, well, one, it's the first time I've seen the ATF show up somewhere and not firebomb people, so praise God. But like, and like actually do, yeah. I don't know. There's just too much. Like there wasn't enough information for me to like form a strong opinion. What I see, I really don't like, and I think it's just because I really don't like the ATF or the IRS.
Right. Well,
it also kind of reminds me of when I think it was the FBI when they started like raiding people like who were pro-life, and they were starting to raid like their homes and stuff and starting to like get aggressive with them, all because like this guy went and like prayed outside of an abortion clinic, or this person went and like started, you know, being outside in the crowds and stuff. So I just a thought there too, that kind of reminds, so it's not too hard to buy right now. I agree with Zach though, that there is kind of like little facts in there, which can kind of be like, what are we doing? Why isn't there at all? But yeah, just a little thought there that kind of reminded me of that just now.
Well, I mean, these organizations have always been used politically. Like, the FBI spied on the Catholic Church when JFK was running for president, simply because people didn't, they were nervous about having a Catholic president. You know, like, it seems kind of silly now.
Well,
but
it's very recently been reported that they currently have informants in the Catholic Church, which, I mean, it's not shocking because maybe the program just never ended altogether. But
I'm sure they're spying for different reasons, because I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Catholic Church the last, like, 30 years or so, but there's definitely been some I'm not going to use words that will get this video taken down on YouTube, but there's been some activity, shall we say, that everybody knows about, but only like a handful of people actually do and, you know, talk about. So, you know.
Yeah, and I can't speak to those exact numbers, but I believe I catch your drift. But either way, what I find, wink, wink. But what I find disturbing, so giving the benefit of the doubt. So if I give the benefit of the doubt, let's say that this guy did have some shady business. Of course, the article says that he did not, but we'll give the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, post-millennial is more liberty-minded, so they're going to take the side of the small owner of the shop. But either way, taking all those forms means that they just took a bunch of information from all of his different customers, which means that there is a ton of people in Great Falls, Montana, that now their information is in the hands of the IRS and the ATF for what purpose? Because maybe they're looking for a guilty party, but this is again where the presumption of innocence needs to be taken into factor. You can't breach a person's right to privacy just because you know, even if there is legitimate reason, maybe let's say he sold it to a bad character. Well, you can't take all these forms for all of his customers just to potentially find that one bad character, not without, proper, doing the proper means of like a warrant or whatever exact legal means you would have to do to get that information. But either way, it's obviously that wasn't communicated to the store owner.
It's also
either way.
Strange that I believe it was mentioned in the article that like the local government wasn't contacted at all. Like the state of Montana wasn't contacted at all. Yeah. Like the IRS. So like that is also, I don't know the protocol. It just like the only reference that I have of this is the general store here in Spokane that lost its fire. And again, like there was no like feds involved, like directly at least. It was all handled by the state government.
Yeah.
So again, like I don't, I don't know if like the laws have changed or how they're enforced has changed. Maybe it's stricter now than it was again, because this wasn't like 2006 when they lost their licenses. So the gun laws then aren't what they are now. So I don't know if that's more treated more seriously. That kind of makes sense, but again, why take everybody's, listen, again, it's information they probably already have, right? The IRS, if you pay taxes, they know you exist.
Right.
If you buy a firearm, the ATF knows you exist as well.
Right.
So, like,
exactly.
it's weird. There's just something about it that is rubbing me the wrong way. Yeah. And I can't quite put my finger on it.
Well, speaking of weird, we got to go to our next story, which is Matt Walsh exposing Fox News. So I'll do my best to read this tweet thread without so many mistakes. Breaking. We've obtained internal docs from Fox News employees. Fox Corp is celebrating Pride by encouraging employees to read about glory holes, supporting a group that gives sterilizing hormones to homeless youth, and deployed woke AI to monitor everyone. Explicit content warning. The documents we're about to show you were produced by Fox Corp, which is the parent company of Fox News. These materials are presented to Fox News employees when they log into their employee portal. Let's start at the top. And just for those watching, I'm not going to click on any of the photos. You can go through Matt Walsh's Twitter thread on your own time to see all the references here. I'm just going to give you the summary that Walsh provides for us. Under the heading Support One Another, Fox encourages employees to donate to Trevor Project, LA Forney Center, and LA LGBT Center. The Trevor Project, which Fox says is devoted to helping LGBTQ young people, hosts a sexually explicit chat room that connects children as young as 13 years old with LGBT adults. There's probably a word for that. The LA Forney Center, which Fox praises for rescuing homeless LGBT youth, appears to admit on Twitter and its website that it injects these homeless young people with cross-sex hormones, which are known to cause sterilization. The Los Angeles LGBT Center, which Fox calls Unstoppable, has posted a video of a mother surprising her trans daughter with the child's first dose of hormones. YouTube removed the footage for terms of service violations, but a screenshot is still on Twitter. Let's scroll down a bit more on Fox Employee Portal. Employees are also encouraged to expand their perspective by reading books by trans activists, including a memoir titled Fairest, about a precocious boy who would grow up to become a woman. The book contains information that's obviously important for Fox employees as they go about their duties at work. For example, an early scene explains what a glory hole is. And for those who do not know, I had to find out for this article. A glory hole is a hole drilled in the side of a restroom stall that you do something explicit with. That's all I'm going to say for now. The Fox-endorsed book also details the author's graphic description of having a blank in their mouth. Another book that Fox leadership encourages its employees to read, Red, White, and Royal Blue, is about a fictional gay relationship between the Prince of Wales and the president's son. It contains this dialogue calling America a genocidal empire. The book, which Fox suggests will expand your perspective, also quickly devolves into gay erotica. The Fox leadership doesn't just pick out books for adult employees. They also suggested a Pride rainbow-filled kids book with a character who comes out as a unicorn, presumably symbolizing coming out as gay or transgender. Fox further recommends that employees listen to podcasts like Query and watch various TED Talks about LGBT life. In one of those talks, a woman explains that undergoing a medically unnecessary double vasectomy is a sign of strength. Elsewhere on the Fox employee portal, workers are encouraged to attend a Ben & Jerry's powered Pride event at the New York headquarters of Fox News. Not all Fox employees are happy with this propaganda. This might be why last year, Fox experimented with a solution to monitor employees' commitment to DEI. It's an AI platform called Escalera, which tracks employees' commitment to the cult of DEI. Fox leadership told employees to sign up for Escalera so that AI could help them engage in activities that will deepen their understanding of identity and explore more nuanced D&I concepts. Escalera says it pulls in data from various sources, including the email and payroll systems. It generates a peer comfort index and a diversity index based in part on how often employees practice micro-affirmations. One of Escalera's key functions is to influence decisions involving personnel. The AI can even calculate an attrition cost that different divisions could suffer if they fail to promote DEI. All of the woke indoctrination Fox pushes on its employees seems to have succeeded. Some Fox News employees are openly hostile to their audience. Here's the Instagram page of one employee with pronouns in bio who is highly influential over Fox News' actual content. This employee frequently posts about his work at Fox News. Like this Biden victory image he was, quote, so happy we got to use. This Fox News employee also regularly lashes out at Fox News' audience. In a recent post, for example, he attacked conservatives' concerns over drag queens targeting children, writing, "When are you Hicks going to be honest about who the real problem is?" The Fox News employee also came out in support of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a group that openly mocks the Catholic faith. Catholics wonder why we have an order of nuns to push back on this ridiculous garbage, he said. Do any of the executives and owners just not know what's happening in their company? Are they trying to comply with some onerous New York state law? Do they not care? Do they actually support this nonsense? Fox News' audience deserves to know. Or maybe Fox leadership isn't concerned with how the audience feels because they're not really beholden to those viewers at all. Like YouTube, some of Fox's largest shareholders are enormous institutional investors, particularly BlackRock and Vanguard Group. These massive funds consolidate the wealth of millions of Americans and then use their combined voting power to pursue a radical agenda most of those Americans oppose. They are Fox's real customers, and they're getting exactly what they want. So obviously that was a massive thread, and we can kind of pick it apart bit by bit. But my initial thoughts to this is, honestly, I immediately think of Dante's Ninth Circle, which, if you're not familiar, it's the idea that the deepest circle of hell is for traitors. I'm not saying these people are going to hell. I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm saying it's the concept that a conservative news site and conservative news channel would not only push something that is against their audience, but something that is in direct opposition to their audience. So it's very clear to me that Fox no longer cares about what their audience thinks. And probably the last two tweets that Walsh mentioned is probably the largest indicator for this. BlackRock and Vanguard are two of the biggest pushers of the Great Reset and this ESG corporate credit score, which brings me to my last thought, which is that the internal AI system that was monitoring the employees and their behavior is probably the scariest thing to come out of this story in my mind, because if a company in New York like Fox is experimenting with this, it's only a matter of time before this is going to be pushed out to be mainstream for all employers to use. But Anastasia, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, first off, like if conservatives had like a Man of the Year award, I think Matt Walsh would win. I think he would take the cake because Buddy has been busting his butt doing so much work. So props to him, first off, obviously. Secondly, I mean, maybe this is bad, but I think about like that episode in The Office where like there's like that inappropriate picture and there's like sexual harassment and stuff like that. And I think about the fact that I'm like, why is this kind of stuff not being considered sexual harassment? Because if I was at work and someone was sending me things like about glory holes and all that kind of sexual content, like how is someone not allowed to go to their manager and be like, yo, this person's being crazy, but for some reason that this is not considered sexual harassment, to be encouraged to read this kind of stuff at work? And honestly, it's not surprising because yes, it is Fox News, but like these are all people and people are sinners just like the rest of us. So for us to put Fox News up on this kind of pedestal, like they can't make any mistakes, and for people to be surprised about this, it's kind of dumb to be surprised about this. It's clear that one day something like this was going to fall. And especially like, I mean, if we didn't see this coming with Tucker Carlson being ousted and things like that, I don't know what you guys expect. But I think it's alarming because I think that there's a lot of division within our own base. I think that's scary. And I think like conservatives, I also think Christians, I think conservative Christians always get so kind of confused, like why we're losing and why we're not, gaining any ground and things like this. That's why we're not gaining any ground. And this is why we're not winning. Because if our media, if the people that we turn to get our news can't even stand on our own base, like what are we doing, guys? Seriously. And then you get confused why we're not winning and why we're not gaining any ground. And this is one of the major reasons why. Like with the Chosen and the pride flag situation and people saying, oh, that's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal. It's a Jesus show for people who believe in Jesus. And Jesus clearly states what he means. Marriage is between one man and one woman. And so for all you conservative Christians out there who said that kind of thing wasn't a big deal, it's a major big deal. And the fact that you do not think it is a big deal, you are the problem. And this is a problem because this is one of the main places that we go for our news sources. And And I would agree that the AI thing is probably the most alarming out of all of this. I completely agree with you, Connor, that the fact that these things are starting to kind of monitor what we're doing and monitoring if we're being inclusive or not. I mean, like, I can't even imagine getting, especially as a female, getting pulled into my manager's office. Like, what do you say to a younger female employee? Please read more about the glory hole that I sent into your email. Like, seriously. Like, I would want to sue for sexual harassment. Like, but for some reason, like, I wouldn't be allowed to, and that's on me. Like, that's so intimidating. That's so scary. I thought you guys stood for women's rights. I thought you cared about women. I thought you cared about people, and now you're sexually harassing them at every turn. And if these people are willing to come for your kids, and they're willing to come for you, and it was only a matter of time, I think this is one of the kind of the craziest things to happen so far this year. And I'm hoping that this is kind of a wake up call for a lot of people.
Yeah. Michael?
I appreciated that Matt Walsh he does the work to expose these things. I think many people, just myself included, I have a healthy bit of skepticism towards any news, just in general. So anytime information's being given to me, I vet it with a high criticism. So in my mind, Fox being one of the titans of the industry still kind of disqualifies it as being reputable in my mind just already. So that's the position that I come from. But what I appreciate about what Matt does is he does the grunt work and makes it so that people who are too ignorant to kind of come to those conclusions can say, oh, you mean you don't represent my Christian conservative values? Which I would argue, no, Fox hasn't represented a conservative Christian's values for many, many years, if ever.
Yeah.
But there are many in even a specific age demographic that still think, oh, I'm a Republican, that means I watch Fox News. And that's a dangerous water to be treading. And I appreciate Matt Walsh trying to put stuff out there to say, look, they're really not your friends. And in my opinion, they never were. But that's just my skepticism and a healthy dose of distrust towards anything in big media.
Yeah, I can understand that. Zach, what came to your mind when you were reading this thread?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I'm not a super huge Matt Walsh fan, like, at all. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I will say I do appreciate somebody who is, a conservative, kind of coming at, Fox for this, because, I mean, I've never, placed any stock in anything Fox says, and to Michael's point, you're right. I personally, I know for a fact, actually, at this point, that they have never, ever been, quote-unquote, conservative, or a lot of what's fake about Fox News is not necessarily the information or the news aspect of it, it's how they present it. And I would urge everybody watching or listening to this to seek out either the book itself or the actual Substack that journalist Matt Taibbi did. The book is called Hate Inc. If you want to learn about the news industry and you want to do so without having to do years of research like nerds like me do, read that book, because it's 200 pages and it will give you everything you need to know about how nutty mainstream media is and just journalism nowadays is. But what is, and then to Anastasia's point, I've seen in my very short work history, people get fired for less than, making people read these types of things. So it is kind of scary with that, working from that framework. And also you should know, educate yourself on these things, and you should seek out these TED Talks and things like that. But under no means should you be compelled to by your workplace, especially under the auspices of diversity and inclusion. Just talk to people. Chances are somebody that's gay. They're a human being with thoughts and dreams. You don't have to read fan fiction, right? Political,
your gay friend
fan
doesn't
fiction.
have to talk to you about their erotic fantasies either.
Exactly. You can add most of them are pretty open. They'll have a conversation with you. I promise, and it won't be weird or creepy at all. This is this is weird and creepy.
Mm-hmm.
You can have conversations with these people. You can educate yourself to do it, And it's like, you can, there's a way to do this, and like the way they did it, if it's as, bad as this is made out to be, like there's a way to do that without doing this, like making people read sexually explicit things. Like, because that is, like at least under every company I've ever worked for, sexual harassment guidelines, like that falls under that. So it's weird that like, is there really anybody out there? That's just another thing that comes to mind. Is there really anybody out there that actually thinks these companies like care like about their viewership, like their values at all? Like, because I sure don't. Like, and I think that's evident, based off their behavior the last 30 years or so. So again, Nick, I'm not surprised by that because, like I said before, not on this show, but in other places, like every company has some kind of weird diversity, inclusion, and equity statement there, and they all roughly say the same thing. So like that shouldn't also be a surprise to you that Fox has that, because every company has that. So for better or for worse, that's more of a cultural conversation. It's just a fact. Companies have those now. Like,
well, also like Connor, like, was your life fine before you knew what a glory hole was? Like, I'm so serious. Was it good? Were you chilling?
No, I needed to know. No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I'm saying though. I'm like, nobody needed, like, what was the purpose of even sharing any of that? Like, and like, even if you wanted to go as far as being like, here's what Pride Month is, which I'm not advocating for at all, but if you wanted to, and if you wanted to be like, here's what this is, like, what does any of that have to do with any of that? Like, you didn't have to share any of what you shared. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to say any of what you said. That doesn't benefit your work at all. I've never been sitting at work being like, wow, I really want to read erotic fan fiction right now. And the thing is, like, if you're listening and reading all of that and listening to our conversation makes you uncomfortable, good, because that means you're a sane human being who can rationalize the fact that we shouldn't even be discussing this right now.
You know what I actually think is going on? I actually think that this is the higher ups at Fox starting to weed out the remaining conservative employees that they have, because I think that this is one of those institutions that the left has not successfully finished marching through yet. They may have had many successful people kind of in that neocon kind of space within Fox News, but I think that this is maybe the beginning of, the final push to overtake Fox and just turn it into another MSNBC, which you could argue that it's just as bad as MSNBC, but it was from a different perspective, whether you agreed with that perspective or not. I feel like this is just going to close up the echo chamber and make it officially complete.
It's possible. However, for lack of a better analogy, I think a lot of the people, like, not just specifically at Fox, but also any legacy media, shall we say, a lot of these people, like, if you dig into like their pasts and like, well, not even just like, like their personal lives, I mean, just their careers. Like, I think a lot of these people are like, for lack of a better analogy, like gay for pay, right? Like, if you need some token conservative to be on your show and you're at CNN and the salary is good, I'll basically be an alt-right Nazi on your show. I think so. I don't think there's any true like conservatives or for the liberals, even for that matter, at these places. I think a lot of these people they have their journalism degree, they have student debt that didn't get forgiven, and they need a job, and this is what they want to do. I think a good example of that is Megyn Kelly, for example. Probably the best example recently.
Well, she's definitely well known for being a part of the controversy of Fox and sexual harassment and things of that nature. So that's definitely something that comes to most people's minds. I think something that is very evident too is the fact that Fox is headquartered in New York, specifically New York City, and has been for many, many years. And it's very clear that they are, first of all, they're going to struggle to find conservatives to work for them, honestly, because what conservative individual that's aware of the political of the political world would want to move to New York City? Honestly, I wouldn't ever move to New York City. You couldn't pay me enough. I'm going to end up mugged on a subway or thrown in jail for defending myself for being mugged on a subway. But either way, I think that already shows Fox's level of commitment to conservative ideals. Whereas you've got other companies that are kind of in the process of trying to replace Fox that are kind of the missing link sort of companies, like The Blaze or Daily Wire. And Daily Wire moved their headquarters to Nashville. It's like, if you're going to choose a state, you should probably choose, home turf to make your headquarters, as opposed to, being deep into the bowels of the other side's home turf, where you're going to constantly be inundated with attacks from a completely different perspective, which obviously it's good to challenge yourself, but to have no resting quarters is a dangerous game to play when it comes to the ideological makeup of your crew. So that's just where my mind initially goes. I just don't understand the choice of staying in New York City after everything that's happened here.
Well, for some reason, we still prescribe to this false ideology that all movies are made in LA, all news comes from New York, and that's just it. Like that we have to conform to those things, as if there isn't infrastructure in any other city to make that happen. Well, we have the technology. We could do it from rural Iowa if we want to, but
yeah, absolutely. Because where did Nefarious, wasn't that shot mostly in Oklahoma?
Yeah, and actually, when they were doing the premiere and everything, the producers were in LA and they were like running their studio and stuff out of there, and they were like, honestly, we are moving, and they are I think they're moving their studios to, where is it? Dallas? My husband says Dallas. I can't remember. But yeah, so I agree. I like when we were talking about California the other day. I'm like, why in the HE double hockey sticks would you stay in a place like that? Seriously, just move. Just seriously move. But I completely agree with the New York thing. 100%.
Yeah. Well, it's wild. I don't get it. I mean, Daily Wire did their Terror on the Prairie when Gina Carano got fired. She was like, yeah, let's go make a film in Montana. I think she chose the location, Montana. It's like, good. Yeah, go to Montana. Give some of these other states the business, honestly. If nothing else, reward your allies is honestly what it boils down to. If you have to spend money to put on a production, go somewhere where you have people that are more ideologically sound. That goes for
you don't even have to go.
anyone.
See, this is I made this. Sorry to not to hijack it, but if you go back in the archives of this very podcast, I did one of my early rants on this show was about like the arts and everything like that. You don't have to go to California to make a movie. Like
Right.
if you've got like 7 friends and they are willing to give pool in some money, you can make or at least get the ball rolling on a movie for like $15,000. Like most of that is going to be spent on your cameras. And if you source actors from your community, every town has actors in it. You just have to like know where to look. Like you don't have to go. You don't even have to like leave your hometown. Like you don't have to leave Iowa. Like I don't have to leave this city to make a movie, like,
Yeah.
So like, I think the reason why they stayed in New York is because at the time that Fox News, I don't know how much anybody knows about like the history of Fox News, but like, that's where like TV news was done. Like it was all in New York. So at the time it made sense, but you could literally do a podcast like this.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's
anywhere.
Decentralized now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think people's biggest fear is failure.
Yeah.
People's biggest fear is failure. And I think, again, I keep saying our base, but I don't know what better term for, but I think that's another big thing for us as well. Like to Zach's point, like start, like you can make a movie right where you're at, or you can make a podcast right where you're at, and you can make a huge impact. You know what I'm saying? Without even, you just don't need to be like afraid of what people are going to say. And I think once you can get over that fear, like, and kind of really follow like what God has planned for you, like a lot of doors open that you would have never even thought were going to open for you.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, I want to go to a couple of quick chats here, and then we'll move on to our next story. So Shara Joel, we've been a little quiet on our chat, so we'll bring them in. Shara Joel said, Fox is garbage. They're just controlled opposition. Like everything else, it's all about the money, which goes to Zach's point.
In Jesus' name, amen, I say.
She said, Fox News is not conservative. I don't think they ever have been. They just seem that way because CNN and MSNBC are just far left. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and to clarify when I was talking about Fox, I more meant like a lot of people tend to kind of like, to Michael's point, was more of like, oh, I'm conservative now, I'm Republican now, so I must watch Fox News, was
Right.
kind of to clarify
Yeah,
that point.
that still exists.
Yeah.
It does.
Surprisingly.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then Michaela said, yes, Man of the Year award is right about Matt Walsh. And she also said, my life was very good pre-glory hole knowledge. Yeah, absolutely. I think
Wow,
Am I the only one
no
whose
one else.
life didn't change? I think it's because I found out about that at such a young age that it just
I'm sorry.
didn't matter.
I did already know what that was.
Yeah. I like.
Can't
My
say
life
I
wasn't
did.
better for learning that earlier either.
Yeah, but now you're going to be suspicious of every hole in the wall that you see from here on out, Michael.
I don't
And that's
happen
not
upon
necessarily
many
a
large
bad
holes
thing,
in
man.
restroom walls. Maybe that's just me, but
Probably a good time to move on, huh?
Oh boy.
So this
I'm
is a
just
clip
saying.
that I wanted to go ahead and just have you guys react to regarding a school administration reacting to their students and how they are handling pride. So hopefully the audio is good. Let's go for it.
Displays of intolerance and homophobia are unacceptable.
This type of intolerant rhetoric starts in the home.
Parents angry at town hall over intolerance at Marshall Simons Middle School. Kids were asked to wear rainbow clothes in honor of Pride Spirit Day, but some organized a counter-protest wearing red, white, and blue or black. The principal sharing a statement to families that Pride posters were ripped down, stickers ripped up. Some students chanted USA are my pronouns, and students showing pride were intimidated.
It was an unruly disruption, in fact.
Man, she seems like the life of a party.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking that about Joanne. Okay.
Was organized ahead of time.
While some parents were upset, others say it was overblown.
Some of the kids threw the stickers on the ground. But, I can only speak for my daughter. She didn't want to wear that to school. It's not that she wanted to hurt anybody's feelings.
She says her daughter felt coerced to participate in the Pride event and was offended by some of the messages, like this quote from Tennessee Williams.
Human heart cannot be straight. It is curves and winds. And my daughter just kind of said, Mom, that's offensive to me, who I am straight.
Well,
in
my
the first
initial
few
thoughts.
seconds.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Mike.
go ahead, Connor.
I was just gonna say that I loved the USA are my pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, this is actually, to me, a result of when conservatives finally step into the culture war. We can actually take back some ground. Because, as Zach even said this on the show before, the left for many decades has been telling a better story. I think conservatives are only just now realizing that they made a big mistake by abandoning the arts because they pushed away a lot of artists. Honestly, I think they pushed artists towards left-leaning ideologies. But beyond that, I think that many individuals just abandoned the arts that could have been great artists that went and did something completely different with their life because the conservative talking heads told them that the arts is honestly a waste of time. But recently, very recently, within like the last 5 years, it seems like the right has been actually starting to make ground in culture war, whether that be in film or music or just setting up alternate media. And we're starting to see results of that. That's what this says to me. And the USA are my pronouns makes me think this is also meme culture and memeing in the culture war. And honestly, the right-wing meme makers have been making some big rounds in the culture war as well ever since like 2015. And I think that it's no longer cool to be woke. So there's my take. Please chime in.
That's good to see. I guess them taking it seriously. Maybe I don't know if I would go as far as to say conservatives abandon. Maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm not really conservative. But it's nice to at least see them taking it seriously. I don't think that was ever, at least, done before. I think actually what you outlined before, like the meme things. I think that's honestly, I think the opposite of that. I think it's for sure. Personally, it made it harder for me to take conservatives seriously because it was hard to tell where you were actually coming from. If you think about like 2015, 2016, because everything was just so over the top and just trying to get a reaction out of people and try to make people angry. And there's a place for that, for sure. Poking people in the axioms isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think at a lot of conservative pages at the time made it a bad thing. And so it damaged not only their credibility, but conservative movements as a whole. So to see that kind of pull back and like find them, to see them find that balance of, you know, humor with memes and things like that. And then also actually start to, rather than just, I guess I've always seen it, maybe I've been wrong on this, but it always just seems that it was like always reactionary. The response culturally was knee jerk in response to what's happening. So it's nice to see conservatives actually like wading into that with a bit, you know, taking it with a bit more, I guess, sincerity. I think would be what I would, a way of maybe is a good way of describing it.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree. I would honestly tend to agree with that. I think a lot of the things, I think we're almost always late to the party, and genuinely. I also think though that like kind of when we lose sight of the mission, we kind of get off track. You know what I'm saying? And like let them do all the jokes and the petty stuff. Like, yeah, it can be funny for us, but like kind of what's, I don't know, maybe I don't want to like mischaracterize what you're saying, but like if you're not a conservative and you're kind of outside looking in, it kind of looks like you're just kind of a jerk because you don't really get like our little inside jokes, or you don't get our memes and stuff.
Right.
No, so I do. I just don't think they're funny. Continue. I actually have a sense of humor.
That's fair.
I think what the kids did was great, obviously. I think the scariest quote in that video, though, I actually wrote it down earlier when I watched it, was when the mom is talking about what her daughter says, and her daughter says, "Mom, blah, 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 whatever, I'm upset because I am straight." I think that is the scariest quote in that video, and this is why. Do not use their terminology. You're not straight. You were just made to be who you are, period. And as the mother, like, and I understand that she was just kind of trying to explain the situation, and I get that. I think that's the scariest quote you can possibly say, though, is do not use their terminology. Do not conform to their ideology. You're not straight. You're a girl who likes dudes because that's how you were made to be. So I think that's scary. I also think another scary quote in there was when the teacher says intolerant rhetoric that starts in the home.
Yes.
That's what I was going to comment on. Yeah, and I love that. The administrator says this intolerant rhetoric starts in the home. And I want to say, amen. Yes, it does. That's exactly where it should start, because Lord knows the degradation of our culture is large in part because children don't have home lives that can educate them on morality, that don't have the ability to teach them the skills that they need to be successful in a social sphere like a public education system. I was really advantaged in that even though I was raised up in public school, my parents taught me at home, and I knew what truth was, and I knew what reasoning was. I learned the qualities that I needed to be able to discern well when I was being educated, and that protected me from a lot of, I would say, less than helpful lessons I could have learned in public education. And most public educated school children do not have that advantage.
Yeah. So Zach, what is kind of the biggest thing, since you wouldn't consider yourself in the conservative camp, what has been the most positive impact that you've seen in recent years coming from the conservative side and when it comes to the culture wars?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I outlined before is like people are starting to take these things seriously, which I think that was kind of one of the downsides of having Donald Trump, because it was just that entire like election cycle was just so over the top and just so there was no shortage of I guess this doesn't belong solely to him, but there was no shortage of ridiculous moments there. And I think because to be fair and like even like a lot of it was really funny, to see these people lose their minds, to think that we were headed for some sort of weird like dystopia, even though like the thought of like Donald Trump having the mental fortitude to preside over anything but a McDonald's dollar menu with an iron fist is like hilarious to me. Like that people were so frightened by him. And then I realized, then my rational like libertarian brain kicked in, and I was like, oh, they're not scared of Donald Trump. These people are scared of like the power that we've allowed the president to have and things like that. And so those became teaching moments for me in my conversations where I was able to, so seeing conservatives now kind of get onto that page where like, and like also not be afraid to
Well, there's still the Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, Matt Walshes, who
but
take the intellectual stuff on the chin and can be so dogmatic that that's off-putting.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. And then a lot of that too is also, it doesn't help that like a lot of that is just like vanilla conservatism, right? Like those PragerU videos that used to be back when I was on Facebook, and see like sometimes they'd make like interesting points, but like if you somehow like slightly disagreed with them, there's that slight undertone of like you somehow hated America. And so like that's why like a lot of those videos ended up being funny to me, because they'd like present something as like, they'd be like, well, here's a politically incorrect opinion for you, America is awesome. And I was like, well, nobody like really disagrees with that. And if you do, like, again, like it's hard to take the people who say those things.
This is where I would disagree with you, though, is because I do think that I think probably the average person doesn't disagree with you, but the left-wing base does think America is terrible, and that's become
I don't think so, man. Like I think again, it's so easy to get trapped into those like into that line of thinking.
Here's the thing that I think that you and I are probably going to. Here's the part that I'm going to grant you. I think that you do a good job, Zach, of trying to remember the average person and what the average person feels. And I think you're correct. I think the average American would not think that America is terrible. I'm talking the left-wing base that runs that directs where the party's going.
Okay.
Honestly, I think the most left-wing part of the Democratic base is who is in control of the Democrats.
Okay.
I mean, for crying out loud, transgenderism went from being like a complete fringe, no one hardly heard of it, to being mainstream in a matter of like 3 to 5 years. And that's a lot of it's because honestly, I think a lot of individuals got into the power with people like the Squad, like members of the Squad got into power. And I think a lot of what really allowed them to have less power is a lot of the people that were more in what we would call the establishment really gave them a lot of their social desires, as long as they kind of kept everything else, the gravy train, still rolling. And that's why you see AOC. AOC doesn't speak out against wars anymore. She used to. Now she's all for sending all of our money to Ukraine. And a lot of that's just because I think that the radical left-wing individuals really got a deal made with the more establishment Democrats, to where as long as they don't speak out against the sort of main establishment orthodoxies, they can have all the other social projects that they wanted. And that's why, I mean, everyone, including Obama, was against gay marriage until Obama's second term. I mean, Trump was actually the
expedient
president that came in endorsing gay marriage, like it or not. And ultimately that's a lot of it's just the leftward shift of the Democrats, which always pulls the right along with them for the most part until recently. I would say that's what I'm referring to, just for clarification's sake. You're right. The average Joe, they still think America is a pretty decent place, but who has the party captive? They openly say that America is racist, genocidal. That it was in the Fox article. The book that was recommended to the Fox employees said that America was a genocidal nation.
Yeah, I mean, and they're not going to make like the principled argument, right? About if you're going to say something nutty like that, at least have something like Trail of Tears or something like that to back it up, where it makes a little bit more sense, or something more recent than Trail of Tears that like for some reason nobody talks about, and it's one of the reasons why I'm losing hair, is like the ongoing genocide in Yemen that your tax dollars are helping Saudi Arabia commit. Like, again, that would be an acceptable way of like, even though it's like not, I don't think that's what they mean when they say America's a genocidal empire, right? That's a way of at least making that argument and have it make sense, right?
Yeah. And to that point, I think that the individuals that people like Anastasia, Michael, myself would probably, people who would call themselves conservatives would probably identify mostly with the minority voice in Congress who is actually speaking out against those things. Probably not as forcefully as they maybe should for some of those things like Yemen, but honestly, like it's very much the minority. I mean, one of my favorite people in office right now is Thomas Massey. I wish there was more of him in Congress, but that's where I think, to my point earlier, I think that the radicals have taken over the left-wing party, whereas the Republican Party, the establishment still has a big hold, and we are actively trying to change that in the grassroots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you will be successful for two reasons. One, you're actually making an effort now. And two, the radicals, as we're calling them, inevitably, I've made this point several other places, but they will inevitably, they're their own worst enemy, right?
Yeah.
If that type of argumentation can only get you so far, and eventually you collapse under the weight of your own self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing but examples to prove that point.
Absolutely. Let's go to the chat. Shara Joel said, good for those kids. If adults won't stand up for them, they have to take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, that was a question I had, Connor. I couldn't remember in the video if it said that the parents were aware of this or if they were not aware.
Well, I don't know to what degree. Obviously, there was the one mom at the end.
That's gonna say
so to some degree, I'm sure there's some knowledge, but I don't know if it's something widespread for the specific Pride Day that was being celebrated. But I mean, Pride Month, to some degree, I think parents just need to not have their eyes closed about public school in general.
I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, and to that point, Michaela said, also, if you want to take back some grounds, then take back your kids and educate them anywhere else but public school.
Jesus' name.
Hear, hear. And she also said, this just shouldn't have to be the fight children have to fight. Amen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But, I thought of this the first time I saw this article last week, was that the kids fighting this battle is so much more effective.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the social backlashing that most adults would have.
True.
And we're not going to have our ESG scores affected when you're a 14-year-old saying, no, I don't really want to be gay. Can I just be straight, please?
Yeah.
But like you said, Anastasia, it's got to be, something's got to give. And if the kid's speaking up and saying, I'd like to not be mutilated, that's a good start.
Think about one of the more this would be, you have to think objectively here for this. It's going to be difficult for some people in the audience, but think about one of the more compelling arguments for gun control that the left has made, right? It's always the kid. Think about the Parkland High School victim. How, it was kind of scary. I mean, it bothered me to see, parents let their kids be used that way. It made me think something was up. But removing my own personal feelings about that, away from that, it was effective. It worked. So all of us respond to kids. That's all I'm saying, I guess, is people respond to kids. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know maybe what I'm saying. I don't want kids to be used, or but I also don't want them to not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So I also think that comes a lot from who the child's parents are as well, because a lot of these kids that are being effective, to Zach's point, effective in quotes, on the left, I guess you could say, are the ones whose parents are literally pushing them to do these things and pushing them to speak out. So I think now more than ever, to people's points, educate your kids and take them home and everything, raise the child up in the way that they should be, and they will never depart from it, is so important right now.
Right.
And raising your child up and being a good role model to them and a good like force for them as well, because then they will make a really great impact. Because I think about some of the kids when they were making impact just in their own schools, like they had no idea that this was going to get on the news. They were just doing it because their parent raised them up the way that they should be. And they went to school and said, you know what, I'm sorry, this goes against what I believe, what my family has taught me. They weren't doing this to be on the news. They weren't doing this to get some form of legislation passed. Like a lot of these kids that we see on the left, I guess. I don't know how much a kid can have a political side, but you know what I'm saying? And so these kids weren't doing that. And so it's so important right now. Like even just one conversation with your child can make a huge difference. And then maybe they'll go to school and maybe they'll start talking with their friends and kind of spreading awareness to this. So I think that's more important than ever right now.
Yeah. And I think a lot of parents make the argument that their kids are going to be salt and light in these public schools. And to be honest, I think the parents, you may have your heart in the right place if that's your argument, but you need to realize that it is a battle. We are in a spiritual battle, and you are sending your child to fight alone for 8 hours a day when they're not even old enough to actually hold their metaphorical sword and shield. You know, yet you want them to go into battle, and it's just way too premature to send your kids into the education system and hope that they're going to just be okay. I mean, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I mean, goodness, that's way more time than what they're going to get with you in the home if you send them to public school.
Even to that point, I mean, I was homeschooled my whole life, and then I really got into like community theater here in Iowa and everything. And it was one of those things where like my faith just wasn't my own. My beliefs were not my own. Like my political views were not my own. And so I was like 16 years old, and like, it's so hard because the weight of everybody else weighs so heavy on you, because those are your friends. Those are the people that in my case, I'm performing with, or maybe in that child's case, they're sitting in a classroom with. So like, when your faith isn't your own and you're not in a mindset of, I'm doing a good work, I cannot come down. I'm doing good work, I cannot come down. It's so hard to keep your mindset, because like, I mean, I remember people trying to convince me that like I'm gay and that like everybody's sort of gay and all this kind of stuff. Like they try, and I don't even think some of them go out having this mindset where I want to brainwash you. I don't like to believe that. I don't think that's the case. That's how they're being raised. So again, going back to my point earlier, like raise a child up in the way that they should be, and they will never depart from it, is very important right now.
Amen. Amen. Well, with that, let's move on to our next story. So this is from technocracy.news. Competing with God, Harari suggests AI could write Bible, creating religions that are actually correct. Oh, goodness here. A top official with the World Economic Forum has called for religious scripture to be rewritten by artificial intelligence to create globalized new Bible. Yuval Noah Harari, the senior advisor to the World Economic Forum, and its chairman, Klaus Schwab, argues that using AI to replace scriptures will create unified religions that are actually correct. Harari, an influential author and professor, made the call while giving a talk on the future of humanity. According to Harari, the power of AI can be harnessed and used to reshape spirituality into the World Economic Forum's globalist vision of equity and inclusivism. Speaking with journalist Pedro Pinton in Lisbon, Portugal, Harari told the elitist audience, "It's the first technology ever that can create new ideas. You know, the printing press, radio, television, they broadcast, they spread the ideas created by human brain, by the human mind. They cannot create a new idea. You know, Gutenberg printed the Bible in the middle of the 15th century. The printing press printed as many copies of the Bible as Gutenberg instructed it, but it did not create a single new page. It has no ideas of its own about the Bible. Is it good? Is it bad? How to interpret this? How to interpret that?" Harari then revealed that he and his allies at the World Economic Forum have a solution to the supposed problems that he just highlighted. AI can create new ideas. It can even write a new Bible. Throughout history, religions dreamt about having a book written by a superhuman intelligence, by a non-human entity, he added. So obviously there's a lot there, a lot of craziness that we're going to have to unpack. But Michael, I wanted to turn it over to you because I know you've been excited about this story. So
yes, please. I've been looking forward to this all night. And sorry about my connectivity issues. So what Harari is saying here, I think he uses very imprecise language. And it's necessary to point out the fact that he's not saying that there should be a Bible made by AI, but that there very likely will be. And in the context of the conversation that he's having, he's talking a lot more about the potential that AI will have for originality and unique thought that can have creative influence. And what he's saying is that it can create religious documentation that is equal to what people want the Bible to be. These are his line of thinking, in that the document produced by AI will be from a transcendent being that is not human. And he's basically saying that's what people want the Bible to be, but then they'll actually have it. Now, as any semblance of an Orthodox Christian, it's easy to become emotionally stimulated by that line of thinking, because we believe that the Bible is in fact the Word of God, and that God is in himself a transcendent, all-powerful, all-present, and all-knowing essence that is a person that is loving, gracious, kind, and just, separate of our reality and yet completely involved in our reality as well. So I'm going to attempt to respond to this without divulging into an emotional response, because I think it elicits an intellectual response. So what I'd like to address is, first and foremost, the imprecise conversation that is being had by Harari here is that he is explaining that the technologies that have been introduced in the advent of greater influence throughout history, like the printing press or even the internet, are a distribution method for human thought. So he talks about the printing press quite a bit, that in this conversation he's talking about how it's a human thought that is then being replicated and distributed, much like any sort of media that we can say has influenced technology. He is claiming that AI is outside of that realm because it is producing its own original thought and is not based on any other person's ideas. And I think that that's a misnomer. I think that it is, in fact, based on other people's ideas, because AI in and of itself is making inferences based on the presuppositions of the data that it is collecting to educate its inference. So when you put into ChatGPT, sure, it's going to generate something that may never have been said before, but it is a inferred collection of all relevant information that is accessible in the data that it is reaching out to. Now, follow me when I say this, is that the uniqueness of religion, and specifically the Christian religion, is that the Almighty God has set in the standard a morality that is absolute and concrete, and we have evidence of that morality in nature and in evidential texts through the Bible, through the Holy Scriptures. If an AI were to produce a Bible, as it were, this Bible would be educated by the presuppositions of the data that it has access to. That data could be the entire internet, it could be every published work ever made, it could be based on the prejudices of a specific accredited article, a scientific journal. What I'm getting at is that the basis of religion usually revolves around morality and how we act upon moral standards. If what this guy is saying, what Harari is saying, is that AI can generate a more accurate and more truthful religion because it has access to a greater data set of human thought. But the problem is, it will still be predisposed towards the biases of the individuals that have contributed to the data that is collecting and inferring perceived truth from. So it will be even more flawed than any previous religious documentation. Now, of course, we are Bible-believing Christians. Praise be to God, because I don't know what else we could do in this world, but we have really keen evidence in the authenticity of Scripture and the substantial way that it has held up over thousands and thousands of years, both in an oral tradition and a documented tradition that has been verified through antiquity for many thousands of years to have stayed true to its original form. Now, for AI to just come up with a moral doctrine based on the data that it has access to is a wild deviation from any semblance of religious morality, because it is not authoritative. It has no authority. It will only be relative to the data that it's accepting as influential. So that's my little rant, is that for him to say that the AI could produce a more accurate Bible, he's exposing his own bias, that the individuals who are contributing to the data that it will be predisposed toward, that is more truthful than any other truth. So it's subscribing to moral relativism, but just whatever the data is producing. So in this case, as it affects our culture, what he's talking about, he's not saying that they're going to literally create a Bible. It's saying that they could create a Bible, and more likely that individuals who have a desire to use power over other people will use this to generate religious documents as a form of influence. He continues and says, now AI is likely able to do that, and it doesn't need to send killer robots to shoot us like we would think of in a sci-fi. He says, and I'm reading a quote from Harari here, he says, it can get humans to pull the trigger. And then it continues in the article to talk about how he basically is saying that the use of technology will make farmers and workers and 86% of the population obsolete. That's just from the article that he's talking about. So what I see here is he's leveraging his own influence over this AI to really begin making people accept the fact that they will be persuaded by the AI itself. He's making it out to be that the AI has its own creativity, and that is a transcendent essence that is greater than any human capacity, when in fact the capacity of the AI is dependent on the database that it is accessing for its presuppositions. I see it as a wild misuse and coercion, and he's saying it right there in black and white. It can get humans to pull the trigger, but the trigger that's being pulled is based on the biases of the programmer. So I think that's terrifying. And no, it's not the Bible, and it cannot be the Bible. And if we're going to believe in a holy God in any way, then we know the authority of absolute morality. And anything that does not come from God is a relative morality, which is folly. And this is a false Christ. If we're going to say that they're writing a Bible, it is a false Christ, and we must guard ourselves, our loved ones, and our culture against these things.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Where does this fit into Revelation?
Depends on how you interpret the eschaton, but
Anastasia, what was your thoughts on this article?
No, I think Michael touched on everything and hit it right on the nose. I mean, one of the things that really stood out to me was when it talks about a religion or a Bible or whatever term it used that is, quote, actually correct. And so, like going to Michael's point, it's like
the hubris.
Yeah, it's like everything that it's based on, it will never be, whatever you create, it will never be actually correct. Like, what is actually correct?
Yeah.
What is truth? You know what I'm saying? So, but that was kind of something that stuck out to me. But yeah, Michael hit everything else right on the nose that I was thinking as well.
Zach, are you looking forward to the day that AI is going to rewrite all of Bob Dylan's catalog?
You can't do it, man. You can't do it. He can't even do it. There's an old, it was like from the early 2000s where he's like, I don't even know how I did half that stuff. I can't do it now. I can do other things, but I can't do, so if the man himself can't even write music like he used to write, an AI certainly can't do it. But that's besides the point. To touch on something Michael said at the end there. Yeah, like this is something like, that the Bible is pretty clear about that is going to happen, like until Christ comes back, right? Is that there's going to be false teachers, false prophets, false, Christ, to use the, So, I mean, that's why like things like this are why Michael did a good job of not like emotionally reacting to it. This is one of those things that will set me off. It's like when I'm so like opposed to like the Passion Translation, I'm like, you are doing something that is extraordinarily dangerous. And like, I have to believe that like, what you're doing is dangerous. And so because of that, that makes it stupid. And like, this is not, like, does anybody remember Raiders of the Lost Ark? Like when all those Nazis get melted, like, do you want to have that happen to you? Cause like, that's what's going to happen to you. Like it's scary, not just cause of like technology, right. And AI and like putting that much trust in a machine, but like what Michael said, like to his point, like it's beholden to, the biases of the people who program it. And I don't trust the people programming it,
No,
I don't trust what's his face that did the Passion Translation. I'm tired, so I can't remember his name. But like I don't trust you. Like you better like if you're gonna tell me that you had a dream from God or that the Bible says this. Like when I go and look at the Bible, it better say what you're saying. Otherwise, we're gonna have a big problem. Yeah. That's all I'll say.
It's the testing of a prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not the guy you want to send and test in the prophet because I'm not going to believe anything he says. And that's somewhat at a certain point that falls on me. Like I'll just go ahead and say that. Like,
well, the point is you can test a prophet.
Yeah.
You can use the word like you were saying, Zach, to test a prophet to see if they truly are a prophet. Right. But either way, I mean, it's concerning to think about what AI is going to do. We talked about it previously. I think that things like deep fakes are going to be really troubling for the church, especially in such an online culture where so many people wake up on a Sunday and don't feel like going to church. So they pull up YouTube and do their church in their living room. And there's going to come a day where there's just going to be probably deep fakes of well-known preachers preaching incorrect doctrine, and sometimes it will be subtle shifts. I'm not saying that it's necessarily always going to be a nefarious intention behind it. There's the key word of the night. But I do think that there will be some individuals who are going to intentionally try to trip up the church this way. But then there's going to be other people that are well-meaning that are going to type into an AI. John MacArthur and John Piper discuss eschatology, and they're going to generate these videos that they're going to throw up on YouTube, honestly, most likely just to get monetization, to make some money.
Sure.
Throw out some popular pastoral names and try to get monetized. And what's ultimately going to end up happening is there's going to be these deep fake videos that no one's going to be able to discern the difference between. Eventually, right now, you can still tell the difference with AI, but it's getting better and better constantly because it's AI. It's learning. And of course, we're adding our own biases, as Michael's already mentioned. And one of these days, we're gonna have, one of these days, it will probably come a time where you'll have to completely unplug from the internet in order to be able to verify what's true. You won't be able to use as Harari mentioned, he talked about the radio and the printing press, and we use that as a way to spread information and to spread ideas and to spread news. And there's going to come a time where the internet will no longer be able to be trusted. I mean, it's already obviously we see.
I'm pretty sure it's there. Yeah.
Well, of course, there's.
Yeah.
But my point is, there are so many individuals that you can still trust on the internet, even if so much of the internet is not trustworthy. I think there are going to come a day where it's going to pretty much be all of the internet, 100% of it you can't trust, because anyone can fake anything, up into the point of creating all their own facts on the ground with deep fake videos that can show that Russia just bombed Japan, and they can have a deep fake video that looks completely realistic of a newscast showing exactly that. And if you don't leave your living room and don't verify things in person, there's going to come a day where AI is going to make everything incredibly hard to understand, let alone the crucial doctrines that the church has held for centuries, and of course the crucial truths of the gospel. But that's my fear.
Mine as well. Yeah.
Shara Joel said, "Oh my goodness, the Passion Translation is worse than horrible, but sadly the Mirror Translation outdid the Passion Translation in badness."
There's another one I gotta learn about. Man, I still am going down the Passion.
I have not heard about the Mirror Translation.
I
have you heard of that,
either.
Michael?
Dozens and dozens that don't need to be explored.
Well, I mean, it's just like, because the Passion Translation, why it bothers me is because that's being preached out of on Sunday mornings to an alarming degree.
Whoever it was, I forget the name of the guy who wrote it, like you were talking about.
Me too.
But he did say,
like,
the Lord spoke to me and revealed that this is what it meant.
I was getting some Joseph Smith vibes from him. I was like, if you start talking about tablets and you don't produce the tablets, like, bro, like, now you're plagiarism. Like, at what level, does like it not become plagiarism and like something becomes an original idea, right? Because like the Book of Mormon was obviously plagiarizing the Bible, and now this dude's plagiarizing the book of, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's a real who's on first type of situation. That's all I'm saying.
Grog said, "Based on tonight's discussions, have you considered reviewing Pendulum, How Past Generations Shape Our Future and Predict Our Future, or Shape Our Present and Predict Our Future, by Roy Williams and Michael Drew?" I can't say I have heard of that one. Have any of you guys?
I have not, no.
Read his next comment because he explains it a little bit more too.
It's a study of predictable 40-year swings in Western culture. Huh. Yeah. There's a good book that I thought did a good job of at least summarizing the cultural swings happening since at least the 60s, was Age of Entitlement by Christopher Caldwell. That was a really good read, but it starts at the 60s. So, if you want to go further back than that, it's not the book for you, but it does do a good job of talking about a lot of the sexual revolution as well as technology that we've been discussing tonight. It talks about the invention of the iPhone and how that shaped our culture. Really interesting. Shara Joel said Mike Winger did a good video on both translations.
He sure did.
He's got a whole playlist.
Yeah,
he does. We like Mike here on this channel. So awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you watching the show tonight. And I know we had a wild ride, and I very much enjoyed it. So, Anastasia, where can people go to keep up with everything that you are doing?
Yeah, mainly on Twitter. So it's Anastasia_Hibbs. And you can catch me on the Steve Day Show twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Excellent. Michael, where can people find you?
I am reading John Wesley. That's what I do now. my summer goals.
Excellent. Zach, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube every Tuesday night for Musical Hangout, a live music extravaganza in which I play the guitar. I tell you some useless trivia facts about music and try to get Dua Lipa to notice me so that we can finally get married and fulfill my destiny. Also, got some new music coming out. I got a new song released last Friday called Beatnik Trousers. It'll knock your socks off. New album coming out in the not too distant future. So follow me on YouTube or on Instagram. I'm the most active in those two places. God bless.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, everyone, for watching. We have been Forge and Anvil, and we will see you next time.